Well, welcome back. I say it all the time, leadership isn't everything, but it's the first thing. Leaders get there first. Leaders also replicate themselves pretty quickly. Whatever they permit, they promote. They just can't help it. You remember the old truth? You're going to know them by their fruit. And then the other adage, well, that apple didn't fall far from the tree. In nature, that's called the law of heredity. Children tend to look and act like their parents. From people to poodles, this is true. Offspring look a lot like their parents. And the law of heredity also means that many other traits beyond physical appearance are passed from parent to child, from poodle to puppy, from oak to acorn. In a way, leadership is like that. Leaders create other leaders who are similar to them. But I've noticed this forming process goes largely unnoticed by most of us as leaders. Most leaders are so focused on the vision and on the goal and on getting there with the right people that they don't really stop to think much about the impact that they as individuals are having on those closest to them. Oh, I get it. I really get it. That kind of focus is a really good thing, but it's also good to remember that mostly leaders create other leaders. So I say it all the time, leadership is hard, but don't make it harder than it needs to be. These hyper-connected and turbulent and fear-industrial-driven times that we are in right now can be kind of hard for us as leaders. Let's get real. It's just you and me sitting right here. There's no one looking over your shoulder, no one listening in, so you can talk out loud back and forth to me if you want. No one is paying attention to what's going on, so lean into this. No one's reading your mind. It's actually hard for some leaders to lead during these times. It's hard for strong leaders to lead. It's easy for weak leaders to lead during this time. So my passion, my life mission is to support and encourage and strengthen and protect strong leaders. Strong leaders with potentially great impact. And after decades of doing this, of this wonderful vocation that I'm involved in, I've come to know firsthand the profound impact that such strong leaders have. In that lifelong pursuit of mine, I've naturally also come in contact with weak leaders. And then I get engaged in, shall we say, cleanup efforts when weak leaders have had their way. And it is a mess that takes a long time to unravel. So which one are you? Nobody wants to admit to themselves, or to anyone else for that matter, that they are a weak leader. So me just asking that question is kind of a hard thing. Most of us default to thinking of ourselves as strong leaders, just like we all naturally think of ourselves as pretty good communicators. We're creative and we're able to wear Crocs in public while avoiding scorn. So get honest with yourself. Which one are you? A strong leader or a weak leader? Strong leaders are a force to behold. Strong leaders are mission-driven and able to articulate that mission and use it to decide. They are principled, and they're able to articulate and apply the principles that they have in a variety of settings. It's so true of these principled, strong leaders that those around them can also articulate and apply the very same principles, almost always in the same words. Strong leaders are unselfish. They step up first to do the hard stuff that needs to be done. They are other-focused, wanting to be better, not just feel better. They are kind. And there's a difference between being kind and nice. A kind person has the other person's interest at heart more than their own comfort. A kind leader is direct in their communication. They are true in their communication. They're not just nice. If someone says to you, do these jeans make me look fat? And you say, oh, no, no, you look wonderful. That's probably nice. But to that same question, if you say, it's not really the jeans, it's you. You need to put the fork down, Snookums. But you say it in a way that is able to be heard and probably just one-on-one, well, that's kind. So strong leaders are kind. Strong leaders are also really curious. They are unflinching in the face of hardship. Does that describe you? They're also expert at leaning into conflict. Not drama, but essential conflict. If there's a conflict there and it's within their leadership scope, they do not shy away from it. They're also willing to live in discomfort for long periods of time. It's not like they seek discomfort, like discomfort or challenge or hard things have intrinsic value in them, but they know that no good thing comes easily. So they're willing to live in and stay in that discomfort, and they don't measure their comfort in that process. They measure progress toward the goal or the vision, the outcome. They also talk a little bit differently. The most common thing I hear them say as a strong leader is, I serve versus I deserve. They often are so grateful just for the opportunity to be able to serve. They're also what we call a well-differentiated person. That means that they do not fall prey to the emotional manipulation of other people and of circumstances. They don't waver away from what is right just because someone else around them is angry or frustrated with them personally. They call that a well-differentiated leader. I've also noticed that strong leaders that I've had the honor of supporting are relentless. They just don't quit. They may change tactics, they may even change strategies, but they don't change the goal or the vision or the outcome that they're after. They're relentless. There are also people who we call built for the storm. And we've talked a lot about that, and maybe some of you have been able to come to a couple of our conferences where we lay out how you need to be able to lay this wonderful foundation in your life so that you lean into storms and value them instead of just hunker down and get through them. So these strong leaders are built for the storm. Is that you? Does that describe you? You're thinking, maybe in a couple of those areas. Well, let me get personal here now. Let's talk about weak leaders, because weak leaders are also a force. They're at the center of many of our colossal problems that we have today. And when you look in any of your work environments, maybe even outside of work, if there's a pernicious problem that just doesn't seem to go away, that results in a culture that might not be very healthy, it's a weak leader who's at the middle of that culture. They struggle to maintain a distinct sense of themselves, especially in relationship to others. They lack this differentiation that can manifest itself on all kinds of characteristics. Here are some of the characteristics where that undifferentiated leader shows up, where they're mostly engaged in the emotional processes of other people and of circumstances around them, and they are easily swayed off course. So characteristic number one is that they are comfort focused. Their own comfort is a really big deal, and they want everyone around them to be happy and comfortable. They're conflict avoidant at the core, because conflict is itself, even if you're very, very good at managing conflict, very uncomfortable. Often as a leader, when I would lean into conflict and try to resolve it with the folks that I'm privileged to be able to work and live with, part of the problem is me, which is very uncomfortable. I know, hard for you to believe, that those of you who know me, hard for you to believe that I would ever be part of the problem. But pull the curtain back, and I am often part of the problem. And so this conflict is very uncomfortable. Weak leaders are very easily swayed by the opinions of others. Usually the people or the individual who have the loudest, most emotional mannerisms about them easily sway these weak leaders. Weak leaders make decisions based upon what the group wants, whatever that means, and based upon what the big complainer wants, whatever that means. And really they're not after getting better, they're after feeling better. Weak leaders cannot identify their own feelings and thoughts when they are potentially in conflict with others. They can't separate what matters to them from what matters to other people. They tend to gravitate, therefore, to people who make them feel good. And they crave external validation. How's it going? What do you think? How am I? They survey people. They run polls. They're constantly asking. They're constantly putting their finger up in the wind to see which way the emotions are blowing in the span of their leadership. They crave external evaluation or validation, and they crave a lot of it. They're risk averse. So they're always going to play to the lowest common denominator, often to the weakest person in the group. I don't mean someone who's truly weak and really needs help, but people who have the weakest emotional processes. They're the most fragile. Oh no, don't offend me. Oh no, I can't believe you've offended me. They try to not in any way upset those people. By the way, have you ever noticed that smart people, wise people, just don't get offended? Huh. I ran across a statement in an interview with the famous philosopher named Dolly Parton the other day. She was being interviewed about people making fun of her and about other people and saying kind of offensive things. And she said something like this: I don't get offended by dumb blonde jokes because I know I'm not dumb. And let's be honest, I'm probably not a true blonde either. She's smart enough to know that whatever they're saying probably doesn't apply to her, so she doesn't get offended. Anyway, folks who are weak leaders are folks who are careful to not ever offend anyone. And they're careful especially to not offend people who pretend to be weak. So weak leaders also are kind of without, not kind of, let's get real, they are very much without a core of guiding principles that they follow. They can't even describe those principles. And then without those guiding principles, other than I need to be comfortable and want everyone around me to be comfortable, they are then left to do what the emotions of the moment demand. They're also duplicitous in their communication. There might be another way of saying this. They lie to themselves and they lie to other people when they say things. They don't even realize probably that they're doing it. They'll say yes to one person and then no to the next person, whatever that person needs to hear. And then when challenged on it, they'll probably make up some story to explain that miscommunication, right? So they're duplicitous in their communication. Try that word on someone today at a barbecue and see if they invite you back. They're also passive aggressive. That's one of the most difficult kind of people to work with. You know that. A passive aggressive person is somebody who says yes, you bet, you bet, you bet, but then they do no. The fruit of their behavior is no, but their promises are yes. And then when challenged on it, they come up with endless number of excuses and they never intend to do yes. They never intend to do it, right? They're also what we call an undifferentiated, which I mentioned moments ago, an undifferentiated person. That means they're not at all different and don't have the kind of core to be different and withstand all the waves of emotions and frustrations and irritations and anger and accusations that could come from other people. They're popular. When you really look at a weak leader, they're popular, at least at first and at least on the surface. And they love that level of popularity and fame, and when they start to lose it, they'll move on to another crowd. They don't say, I serve. They will say quietly sometimes, just when no one else can hear, I deserve this. I've paid my dues. And they are concerned mostly, perhaps totally, with appearances. So, awkward, right? How do you really know if you're a strong or a weak leader? Well, one really good way is to look at those people who follow you, especially if you've been through some storms together. What are they like? Remember, you'll know them by their fruit. Their fruit, all leaders have one kind of fruit. It's other leaders. What's the quality of the people who follow you? It takes a while to see it. What's your fruit? Lastly, this of course prompts a question when I get asked from time to time. Can a weak leader become a strong leader? You might be wondering about that yourself, especially if you honestly, and nobody's in the room and no one's listened to this, if you see yourself in some of the characteristics of the weak leader that I just mentioned. Or maybe if you work with someone who's truly a weak leader, is it possible for somebody to change from being a weak leader to being a strong leader? Maybe, but usually not. Such a change is not a natural developmental change, like a puppy changing into an adult dog. That's natural. Now, such a change is more transformational. It requires a core change in values, in mission, in mindset. It may happen when the weak leader is perpetually, continually confronted with the repeated and repeatable and reliable impacts of their weak decisions. When they realize that seeking the easy and comfortable applause of people makes life harder, much, much harder for themselves and then for the people that they lead. When they experience the emptiness of such a way of living, maybe they will begin to switch from being a weak leader to a strong leader. I haven't seen it happen much, but maybe. So here's the uncelebrated and rarely admitted truth. Weak leaders make everything harder. Strong leaders make us better. Think about that. What about you? What's your internal compass? What is it that you choose when faced with challenge or hardship? Do you choose comfort or adventure? Do you choose impact or smooth? Do you choose self or others? And then what's the fruit of your leadership? The fruit of strong, well-differentiated leaders is a great fruit. It's a fruit of other strong, well-differentiated leaders who have great impact. But the fruit of weak leaders is a multiplying number of self-important, self-centered, entitled, personally evaluated as fragile people who are victims. So the next time you're in a situation that requires you to get there first, and the getting there will likely result in criticism and resistance and gossip and discomfort and complaining from others, what will you do? Will you get there first because it's the right thing to do? And when the challenge of leadership shakes your tree, what's going to fall to the ground? What are those who follow your leadership really like? Something to think about. Here's to you. Hi, Donnie.